All right. Welcome. Sorry, I got to turn off the fan so you don't hear that. But welcome, guys. I'm going to cover the next lecture. We have a lecture on experimental design and then the t-test and then the ANOVA. That's three kind of big topics. I'm going to try to break it up again into a couple videos. So watch for those links. Let's start with experimental design. So on experimental design, what you're doing, and in a true experiment, what you're really doing is you're manipulating an independent variable, right? You have to think that there's an independent variable and there is a dependent variable. And you, as the researcher, are in control of the independent variable, which means you assign people to that independent variable. If you're looking at study methods, then study method is your independent variable, and you might have two levels. And so those levels of the independent variable relate to, how you are manipulating it. So you might have study for 1 hour straight, or study for a 30-second period, and then a 10-minute break, and then a 30-second period. That is two different versions of the same independent variable, so two different levels. And then you would compare those levels in terms of how people learn the material. So that's a classic independent variable, dependent variable situation. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the text defines it. There's a lot more fluidity to experimental design than that, but that's a good place to start. And then once we start to talk about t-tests and ANOVAs, that will also bring in an experimental design because there's a lot of design components as part of that. So let me share with you the correct slides here. So understanding experimental design. Two experimental designs, threats to internal validity, threats to external validity, pre-experimental designs, and so on as we kind of go through. Let me also grab a different pointer. I'm going to do the highlighter again. That seems to work. And I'm going to go with the blue again. Okay, so true experimental designs. With an experiment, what you're trying to do is you're trying to examine cause and effect, right? Cause and effect is the key component there. You cannot establish cause and effect relationships in correlations, particularly with the Spearman-Rho correlations. You can demonstrate that there is a relationship between variables, which means as one moves up, the other one moves up, and so on, but you cannot establish causality. So last lab, we weren't establishing causality of effect. We were establishing that there's a link between those variables, the book reading and the movie watching and those variables. In order for us to establish a cause and effect relationship, we have to attempt to control all factors of influence. And we then manipulate a factor as part of our experiment. So when we control all factors of influence, what we're really talking about is trying to control extraneous variables. So going back to that example that I had where we had study method. So you have study method 1, study method 2, right? This one, it's 60 minutes. And this one, it's 30 minutes times 2 with a break in the middle. Okay, I'm going to keep referring back to this experiment because it's a good, simple example. Okay, so in that experiment, you would want to control certain factors such as, the material. You wouldn't want people to study different material in that situation. You want it to be the same material. You might control when in the day they study. You wouldn't want people in group 2 to study in the morning and group 1 to study in the evening. That creates a confound. Confounds separate and add in a component and makes it difficult to establish causality, because then if one group did in the morning and one group in the evening, is it how long they studied, or is it the time of day that they studied? And so those are those other factors of influence that you're trying to control in order to establish cause and effect relationship, leaving only 1 or 2 or 3 things that are potentially causing the influence. So essentially you're weeding out all the stuff that's extraneous and you're focusing in on those things only those things which you think will have an impact. And I'm going to pause here for 1 second and grab something else that I need. Actually, we'll just skip it. Okay,